Hi everyone, welcome back to Dynasties and Tales. Today we're diving deep into one of the most fascinating topics in ancient history, Athens versus Sparta. These two Greek city-states couldn't have been more different, especially when it came to their political systems. Athens is often called the birthplace of democracy, while Sparta was all about militarism, discipline, and an oligarchic system. So, how did these two very different systems work? And why did each of them become so legendary? Let's break it down. Athens, known for its culture, philosophy, and of course, democracy. By the 5th century BCE, Athens had developed a system that allowed citizens to directly participate in politics. Now, when we say democracy, we have to remember that this wasn't like modern-day democracy. It was a direct form of democracy, meaning every eligible citizen had a direct say in laws and important decisions. But before you get excited, here's the catch. Only a small group of people, free male citizens of Athens, could participate. The ecclesia, or assembly, was the heart of Athenian democracy. All male citizens were encouraged to show up and vote on key decisions. Everything from passing laws to deciding on war. This wasn't just a handful of politicians making decisions behind closed doors. Citizens participated directly, voting on proposals and even nominating public officials. In fact, public office in Athens wasn't based on wealth or birthright, but on merit, and often officials were chosen by lottery. To keep things running smoothly, Athens had the boule, a council made up of 500 citizens chosen by lot every year. These were ordinary citizens, not elites, and their role was to prepare the agenda for the assembly. They could propose laws, but they couldn't make decisions alone. Every major decision had to be approved by the assembly. This system meant that citizens had a lot of responsibility, and the idea was that anyone, regardless of social status, could take part in the political process. Of course, Athens was also a beacon of intellectual and cultural progress. It's where philosophers like Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle began shaping the foundation of Western thought. But, and here's the irony, while Athens is hailed for its democratic ideals, its practice of democracy was far from perfect. Athens had slaves, many of whom worked in the homes of citizens, and women had no rights to vote or participate in politics. So, while Athens' democracy was groundbreaking, it was limited to a small, privileged group. Still, the idea of citizens participating in the decision-making process was revolutionary for its time, and has influenced democratic systems all over the world. Now, let's talk about Sparta, a city-state that couldn't have been more different. Sparta was not a democracy. In fact, it was a highly structured oligarchy, with a focus on military prowess and discipline. While Athens was busy debating democracy, Sparta was focused on one thing: producing warriors who could defend their city-state from any threat. Sparta was ruled by two kings. Yes, two. This dual kingship was unique and was meant to balance power, especially in times of war. The kings led Sparta's army and had significant influence, but they weren't absolute rulers. The real political power rested with the Gerousia, a council of 28 elders over the age of 60, plus the two kings. But the Gerousia wasn't the only governing body. There were also the ephors, 5 elected magistrates who had incredible authority. They supervised the kings, ensured laws were followed, and even had the power to veto decisions made by the kings. The ephors represented the interests of the Spartan elite, and in many ways, they were the ones who controlled the day-to-day functioning of Spartan society. Now, if you think the political system was rigid, wait until you hear about the agoge, the Spartan education and training system. Boys were sent away at the age of 7 to endure harsh training, learning not only combat, but discipline, obedience, and survival. The ultimate goal was to produce warriors for the Spartan army, and failure to perform well in the agoge meant losing your place in Spartan society. By the time they were men, Spartans had little room for anything but military service. Even leisure and art were seen as distractions from the warrior's life. Spartan citizens, known as Spartiates, had almost complete control over the state, but this was only a tiny percentage of the population. The majority of people, the helots, were essentially slaves, forced to work the land and support the elite. And the perioikoi, non-citizens who lived around Sparta, were excluded from political life altogether. So, let's break it down. On one side, you have Athens, with its direct democracy, where citizens could participate directly in lawmaking and political decisions. Athenian democracy was all about freedom of speech, debate, and civic duty. On the other side, you have Sparta, a tightly controlled oligarchy with a focus on military discipline and social stability. Sparta's political system was much more about obedience and the collective good of the state, rather than individual freedoms. Athens valued intellectual growth, individual expression, and open political discourse. Spartan society, however, was about control, unity, and military efficiency. In Sparta, the state came before everything else, including the individual. In Athens, citizens were encouraged to debate, challenge ideas, and pursue knowledge. While Athens saw culture, philosophy, and the arts as pillars of a strong society, Sparta viewed intellectual pursuits as secondary to military readiness. And yet, both city-states had their strengths. Athens produced great thinkers, artists, and philosophers. Sparta produced some of the greatest warriors the ancient world had ever seen. The legacy of Athens is clear. Modern democracy, with its ideals of citizenship, law, and individual rights, owes much to the system Athens developed. Of course, modern democracy is far more inclusive, but Athens showed the world that power could be shared, not just concentrated in the hands of a few. Ideas born in Athens still influence political systems today. As for Sparta, its military culture left an indelible mark on history. The idea of discipline, honor, and sacrifice for the greater good still resonates in many military institutions today. But Spartan society also reminds us of the dangers of rigidity, inequality, and the limits of a militaristic approach to governance. So, which system was more successful? Well, that's a tough question. Athens' democracy, despite its flaws, gave birth to many of the political ideas that shape our world today. Sparta's oligarchy, though not as influential in modern times, created a warrior society that could dominate its enemies. Both systems had their strengths, but both also had major weaknesses. What do you think? Was Athens' democracy the right way to go? Or was Sparta's military-focused oligarchy a better path for their society? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you like this comparison, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon for more deep dives into history. This is Dynasties and Tales, bringing history to life, and see you next time.